Okay, so Jerry, tell us what the name of your company and what your title is.
Well, currently I'm retired, or semi-retired. I work a couple days a week for a grove company called 2020 Groves. But the majority of the time I was with, a couple other companies that operated in DeSoto County in citrus.
Okay. Do you want to name them?
Yeah, it's when I got out of the University of Florida, I went a couple years to Southwest Georgia and worked on a farm. I became a marketing manager for the co-op there, but I wanted back to Florida. I was raised in Fort Myers, born in Florida, and Southwest Georgia was okay, but it just wasn't Southwest Florida to me. I wanted back, and my wife did. And so I started looking for a job down somewhere in Southwest Florida with an ag background and ag degree. And I found this company called American Agronomics. And it's referred to several different ways. Its public company name was American Agronomics, but it had a subsidiary of Golden Grove Management that was like the caretaking wing of the company.
Okay.
And they were looking for some supervisors, and so I put in my application, came down, talked to them, and they hired me as a supervisor of the Grove. And so that was in December of 1978 that I came down and did that. And so from basically December of 1978, I was there until 2017 in June. And so just under 40 years.
Wow.
With one company and several different owners, through the years.
So you've seen a lot of changes.
Yeah, there definitely was some changes. Like I said, initially it was American Agronomics that was the eastern part of DeSoto County, what we'd call the prairie of DeSoto County. And it was under a very unusual plan that it was developed. And they referred to it at the time when I was being interviewed as the largest grove in the world, the largest contiguous grove in the world. And I just thought that was impossible, here in DeSoto County. But boy, the first time you go out there and ride in it and realize it's basically more than a township, and that the earth curves, within that grove, because once you get 7 miles, like you're out on the water, there's a curvature. That's how big that grove is.
And how many acres is that?
Well, it was, I want to say it was over 36 sections, 42 sections total was the property, and then the grove was more like about 36 sections. And, all told, back then the grove acreage was like 22,000, something like that.
Oh my gosh.
But there was a lot of out parcels and other people owned pieces of it. So it was very, very big grove, but here's the unique part about it. It was put together by two brothers from Miami, Jack and Jules Freeman, and they had this idea that you'd put it in an orange grove that would be broken into increments that would then be sold, but continue to manage them over time, and which they had sales all over the United States and all over the world where they sold these pieces. And believe it or not, they would take a 10-acre grove. The whole grove is broken up into 10-acre parcels, which is 330 feet by 1320, which is a full 10 acres. And then they would plant citrus in between those ditches. But then they would actually sell pieces of the 10-acre block all the way down to an acre and a quarter.
Oh my gosh.
So you'd have 8 owners in a 10-acre block. Unbelievable, but when I would have people out there and explain to them, it would blow your mind that that's even possible. But we figured it out. Computer systems were coming along at that time, and we were able to do it and pick it separately the best we could. But to be honest with you, at that time, the grove wasn't very well taken care of. The money was spent in other subsidiaries and trying to buy other types of companies and to become more vertically integrated, and we weren't given a lot to grow citrus, and so it wasn't that great, of caretaking. It had the potential, had the soil, had the drainage, and had lots of good quality water. So it had all this potential. And they made a joke back in the day that 77 Freeze kind of made American agronomics because it was far enough south. It survived the 77 Freeze very well and still had a bunch of fruit that they got a good price for. So they were taking that money and spending other places. But we were still, it wasn't just our own properties we were taking care of. All those scattered owners we were taking care of, and we had to build a system how to do that.
How many total owners were there, do you know?
Yeah, well, at one time there was over 750,
Oh,
you know,
my.
different owners. And like I said, all over Germany and France and places like that, and they would come visit. And there were stories before I got there that they would take them to the good groves and say, this is your grove.
Florida
But-
real estate at its finest.
Yes, but you know, the funny thing is, years later, and I kind of worked my way up the ladder, you know, started as a supervisor, then became what was called the agronomist, then assistant production manager,
Okay.
then production manager, then vice president of citrus, and got all the way up to where in the latter part was close to being the president of the organization, going through all the changes over those years. But anyway, it was a unique setup. Had they managed it a little better, I think it had the chance to really be a thriving, super duper business. But what happened was, and that was 78 when I went out there, 81, we start talking freezes.
Right.
Okay, so one of the real negatives to that grove out there and parts of DeSoto County in whole that are off the what we call the river banks or the ridges or the higher areas, that's a very low area out there, very flat, and so it's very cold on radiation type freezes. The cold air comes from Polk County during the day, and then it
Just settles in.
comes off the ridge and it'll go out there on that prairie. And so I go through the whole decade of the 80s, which we had, you know, amazing amount of freezes, but that grove got hammered several times, you know, during that time frame. And the other thing is, back then we didn't have microjet, you know, it was
Right.
mainly seepage irrigation, not even flood like the East Coast, but seepage where, like vegetables, you fill up the ditches and the water seeps in. So not much for freeze protection to speak of. The best thing at that time was the healthier parts of the grove or the better soils that would stay a little wetter could survive the cold a little better. But anyway, the 81 freeze rolled in, which we know North Florida got hammered. Well, we got hammered too. Basically, 20,000 acres, there was one tree that still had its leaves on it. In the whole
Oh my
grove that we
gosh.
could find, one tree.
Wow.
But it didn't kill them. It just damaged them. And they lost a lot of leaves. And we actually bounced back pretty fast. I mean, that growing season after the 1981 January freeze was a great growing season. We got rain once a week, you know, I mean, they came back. Well, when we refer to the real bad cold was 1982. But what people wouldn't know, except crazy people like me that worked out there and was right in the middle of it, we had a bad freeze in December of 81.
Right.
So January of 81, we got hammered. Now in December of 81, we got hammered. And the trees lost a lot of their leaves again, and they budded out and was a green halo. And then in January the 11th and 12th, we got down to 16 degrees.
Oh my gosh.
So all of that flush won't come back a second time. Once you kill it, once it comes out after being defoliated, and then it gets killed again, now it's dead. Now the wood's dead. So after the 82 freeze, we had 6,000 acres killed to the ground. Another 3,000 acres that had to be pruned back with chainsaws. And then another 6,000 acres that had to be severely cut with hedging equipment, like a Christmas tree type, real up close and personal cut on the tree. And then the rest of it survived as just being defoliated, but it came back.
Right.
So we went from over 3 million boxes to 100,000 boxes. I mean,
Wow.
it was dramatic. So we don't go very long before the next freeze. Christmas of '83 was a major freeze, but it was a windy freeze. And what we've found out over time is that prairie is a little better on a windy freeze than the high hills of Polk County, you know, where they really get hammered.
Right.
When it comes down on the prairie, a lot of times that wind is over. It still hammered us, but we survived the '83 freeze a little bit better and came back with a crop and got good high prices for it. But so then with these freezes, the company was really struggling. So it was looking for a partner. And American Agronomics then ended up partnering with Orange Co., or what you call, merging together. There's a term for it. I'm struggling. The two companies became one.
Okay.
They're both public companies, and they came together. And what was amazing about that is Orange Co. had the processing facilities.
Right.
They had the Bartow plant. American Agronomics had a plant here in Arcadia, but it wasn't very big, and at that point not very successful, not paying out really great money at that point. But Orange Co. had the processing facilities. They also had the largest packing house in the state at Lake Hamilton, Florida, and that's where our headquarters
Oh, I didn't
were.
realize that. Okay.
It was a big 3 million box a year packing house, so it was big. So we had, but what American Agronomics had was grove that needed to be taken care of, that needed the capital and the money to take care of it properly. So the marriage was actually a pretty good marriage, and the guy that put it together and ended up heading it up was a stock guy out of Detroit that actually was one of the original computer traders on the New York Stock Exchange.
Really?
And so anyway, they came together, and Orange Co. was the surviving name. Technically, the entity, I believe, American Agronomics, was the surviving company, but the Orange Co. management took over the merge. It was a merger, and so Orange Co. took it over, and this guy was the head of it.
Okay.
And so we started for the first time, and I reported to a production manager out of Lake Hamilton named Errol Fielding. And
Oh, I remember Errol, yeah.
well, Errol, in my lifetime of citrus, has known as much about citrus and growing citrus as anybody I've ever met. I mean, he was phenomenal.
Was Orange Co. part of Ben Hill Griffin at that time, or did
I'm
that?
getting to,
Okay,
to
sorry.
Ben Hill. You know, it's so that company came together, and it lasted until like 85, 86.
Mhm.
But now, again, they needed to do something, you know, at that point because these freezes, you know, kept
Right.
hammering. So anyway, Orange Co. stays as Orange Co. up until 1992, but we still had the freeze of '83, we had '85, and then of course '89, and then some of the other groves that we had in other counties were actually hit in '86. I mean, every year we had major freezes. Well, categorized as major, 5 of them, but there were some other ones in between. So anyway, you get to 1992, and the guy, like I said, was a trader, and the commodity market didn't go Orange Co.'s way, and we had to sell some of the best groves in the state that were on the East Coast, brought really high dollars, and it helped us survive.
Who'd they sell to?
Ben Hill Griffin
That-
came in then in 1992 and bought the majority of the stock. It was a public company. And so Ben Hill Griffin, that was in May of '92, he came in. And now, for the first time since I had been with the company, we really had the money to do the right things in terms of taking care of growth.
Wow.
With herbiciding and fertilizing and spraying, but as importantly as anything, converting over to microjet irrigation. And, you know, using a citrus caretaking program that is good as anybody in the state. And one of the best ways to survive cold weather is a healthy tree
Right.
that has a thick foliage on it, so it's like an umbrella and keeps it warm. So now Ben Hill's got the company, and he starts putting in capital. We start buying back these grove owners all along. Now Ben Hill started that process of trying to fill in the holes and buy these grove owners all over the world. And we shrunk that number down considerably. And the other thing that happened is some of those groves that were killed back in the 80s had never been planted back. So as we went in and put in the irrigation, we also rehabilitated all those acres and started planting new groves on nice beds, double row beds, and put irrigation. We couldn't, didn't have the water at the time to be able to run all of it at one time, but we could run a big chunk of it, and especially the cold pockets.
So how long did that rehab take you? That's a lot of.
Well, it literally, when Ben Hill bought the company in 92 and sold it in 99, that whole time we were buying and increasing irrigation and planting in.
Okay.
But the first 2 or 3 years was a major push on it. For instance, Ben Hill, when he came in May, he put an order on us, the production people, that he wanted, 200,000 trees planted by October.
Wow.
And basically I got busy, contacted every nurseryman in the state, every planter in the state. There was times out there when we were cleaning up a lot of that freeze stuff. We had started some of the rehab of blocks, but it was a huge program.
Absolutely.
And that year in September, we had some of the most rain that I had ever seen in Southwest Florida. I mean, I can't remember the total numbers, but I know we had 10 inches within a couple days, and then it ended up being about 20 inches that month. And so we shut the planting down during that period, and we still, when October rolled around, we had planted 225,000 trees.
And what year was that?
That was 1992.
Wow.
And so it was quite a project that we did, but we continued up until Ben Hill sold it. And what Ben Hill showed the industry was that property out there was a good piece of property. It just never had, the dollars and capital put into it that it needed to have. And at the same time, we're employing a lot of people in the county,
Right.
where Ben Hill was good about selling. It didn't just all go to Orange Coast Processing Plant. He would deal with other people. And I called him the godfather of South Florida, of Central Florida, because we had many irrigation people out there. He'd give some of them a piece of it, and he said, hey, we want them to stay in business. It's important that they're in business, and then they'll compete with these other guys. And he did things like that all the time, that you'd say, well, maybe that didn't make you all the money, but the good it did for the community and his employees, and he was fantastic to work for. I don't know when anybody's ever heard or not, but he treated me and the employees out there like gold.
Was this junior or the third?
This was the third.
The third, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And eventually started to gravitate towards Hill a little bit, but really it was the third. And he had a right-hand man named Royce Godwin.
I remember Royce too.
That
Yeah.
Royce has been around forever, and it's just one of those amazing things that a guy that's 50 years older than you become close friends. Not like a father complex or brother, just friends, but a huge difference. And so that made my life so much easier to have somebody like him. And then Ben Hill, to me, was a great leader, and our team that he had assembled, did really well. Things like Valencia on Swingle, on really good soil. These blocks started just doing amazing. I'd hear about other people in DeSoto County, the Charlie Harrisons,
Right.
you talk to, and the Turners, and all these people producing 700, 800, maybe 1,000 boxes an acre, and I'd say that's not possible. Well, sure enough, we plant trees out there, put microjet, good drainage, good soil, good everything, and we picked 800 boxes an acre.
Oh my gosh.
in our better blocks. Now you can't say that across the whole grove.
Right.
But we did pick out, well over 400 boxes an acre on 20,000 acres, which I had had people tell me that had never happened with even the big groves on the East Coast and different places. You'd have areas that might pick 800, but you had these over here that were 200.
Right.
So Ben Hill, and maybe never know the whole reason, but, decided to sell Orange Co. Had some family issues. You know how most families, when they get bigger like that, when you have to split it off and all to take care of family members. So about 99, he put it on the market. And it really tickled me because it showed what so many other growers and companies thought of that property out there, because they all wanted it.
Oh, nice.
And they all came in really hard bidding to get it. And yet it was the Grove, I won't name the name of the company, but on a big company that's still in business today, offered Ben Hill the same amount of money for the Grove with the plant or without the plant.
Oh my gosh.
Other words, plants are hard to make money on. Where you've got the Grove and you go out and do a long-term contract, you've got a set way of coming in with money. And so the guys that bought it was Reservoir Capital out of New York, an investment fund. Guys from Texas. I mean, you picture New York City and all, but they went to Texas and school in Georgia, and great guys, super, super smart guys. But they had a connection with CCLP and Robert Underbrink. And so even though they bought the company, they then hired CCLP to manage Orange Co. And I had a dotted line to New York, and then of course to Robert Underbrink with CCLP, which I really loved. I mean, CCLP was big time citrus business guys that were good at what they did and good growers. And so anyway, that was a fun 2 years to work together with them.
So why did Ben Hill not take the other offer? Was it, did the...
Well, the point being is the plant was just a burden, really. I mean, you weren't making money, by taking it, turning it to juice, selling it,
Right.
because you're competing with the Catrales and the Coca-Colas and Orange or Tropicana, and so the processing plant was tough for us to make more money than what we could make off selling the groves.
But the offer that had come in that you said that was a high offer, was that higher than the offer that he took?
No.
Oh,
no,
okay,
no.
okay, I'm gonna
No,
wanna make
I'm
sure it
just
was...
saying they all wanted that grove out
Okay.
there, and it because of its production. And
Right.
the sad part of the story is Ben Hill didn't really get to harvest the fruits of what he had put in, because after he sold it in '99, then we really started picking out some big numbers, and we had
wow.
a set contract. And the other thing they sold, I think for $22 million, was the marketing brands that Orange Co. had. A dairy company, Squeeza, I think it was, bought it.
I don't
Bluebird, Citrus, all these brands they had. And they sold that off. They sold the plant off for a big chunk, and then left with this grove that had a great contract and was picking amazing amounts of fruit. So the New York guys just hit a gold mine.
Right.
But they didn't keep it very long, because they educated me on some of the hedge fund type stuff. You can't really go out and sell on a prospectus that you can return this amount of money. You got to prove it, So they had a coal mine in Colorado and an Orange Grove owned Orange Co. And they sold them and made huge percentage profit money for what they put in. Now they got something to sell, so their fund went from 300 million to 2 billion, or some crazy number anyway, by being able to sell it. Because I teased them later that, man, you guys sold too early, and they're like, no, we sold at the right time, because it pushed their fund then. And then the buyers was the Collier family, one of the Collier families, and it was Collier Enterprises that basically bought Orange Co. And they were partners with CCLP, and somehow that broke up, and they went their different way and bought Orange Co. And then they held Orange Co. for quite a while, and ultimately ended up selling it. The next company that came in was Alico.
Okay.
And Alico was a Ben Hill Griffin company that was a public company, but Ben Hill, his family got involved in it, and then they sold out to some New York guys, and again, it was a public company. And then they took Alico and bought Maxi Corporation with the Wilsons, bought those groves around Frostproof in Central Florida, and then came and bought Orange Cove. And so now Alico has all those groves. Plus Alico had some amazing big good groves themselves. You know, Polk County,
Right.
Collier County, different places. They had some great groves. So you put those three good grove companies together, now you have Alico that still owns and manages that property. And it's back when, you know, Greening came in, you know, literally started managing for Greening in 2006. That grove, you know, weathered the storm better than most groves did. It just had the soil and the condition, and if you'll continue to pump the right money in the right place, the groves have survived Greening. Now that goes back, you know, from that time for a decade, but now, as we all know, it's gotten tougher even to keep those groves in good condition. However, that big grove is still operational by Alico, and you know, has some pretty amazing looking stuff still.
Is it still the same size?
No, no, it's not completely. There's some other owners that got in there that started buying some of these other grove owners that were there.
Okay.
Other citrus guys bought these groves, and Alico has bought back some of them, and we had bought back some with the Colliers. But it's not over 20,000 acres anymore. I don't know what it is today, but it's still, you know, north of 15, and they do a good job. I mean, I retired, just wanted to back off some back in June of 17, but it's surviving.
And was that originally called the Joshua Creek Grove, or what was it?
It's called Joshua,
Joshua.
the Joshua Grove.
And was that based because of the Joshua Creek, or what?
Yes, and there was I don't know about a settlement or anything, but there was a house out there and some other areas that was always referred to as Joshua, and so that name stuck. And you know, the two brothers that I talked about, they actually started in Charlotte County, put their second project in Lee County, and this was their third project that started in '68. It took 4 years to plant it, 68 to 72. And they took every tree available in the state for years. And so there was, like, for instance, Carrizo. You know, there wasn't a lot of big plantings of Carrizo, but they took all they could get and plant. And we had several sections of land that was Valencia Carrizo or Hamlin Carrizo, you know, because they took everything they could to plant. But one of the keys to it, too, is water. And it's just such a blessing. That grove had good quality water, not heavy salt. And yet you have bubbles that Lake Placid or even north, you know, towards Sebring. There's areas in there that have salt north of or further away from the coast than that grove does.
I did not realize that.
That grove has some amazing good quality water, and boy, that makes a difference. The first well that we ever drilled to put in microjet for the first time, it was going to do about 230 acres. The well driller got down to about 540 feet and hit an abyss, a giant hole. It made me nervous to stand on it, even though I had a rock layer underneath me 500 feet.
We've seen the sinkholes, yeah.
But he went down and scoped it, and literally, once it got to that opening, it was just this big cavern. I thought we'd see some bones or some relics at the bottom. We got to the bottom of it, and you know, there's this huge gap, but it just showed you. And the other thing, the water was pretty warm, so it meant it came from a long ways down, or I want to say it was like 84 degrees or something when it came out. But that was an amazing part of that. And the drainage in the old days was pretty shaky, but we worked deals with the surrounding landowners and really improved the drainage, and you know, made it like it was supposed to be and cared for. So you had good water, you had good drainage, and most citrus guys you talk to, if you said what's the most important, water on, water off. You know, if you can do those two things,
You can make
quality
everything else
water
work.
on, you know, water off. If you can do those things, you can grow pretty darn good citrus, and that grove kind of proved it, you know, where, you know, I'd have people joke with me about that crazy grove. It wasn't any good, you know. I'm like, well, it just hadn't had its the right things put on it yet.
It hasn't had the
enough money to do
TLC it needed.
That's exactly right. And once it did, it really flourished. But, DeSoto County, it's got such a great heritage with citrus. And, I think about a gentleman that my dad knew that, I'm 12 years old. He's 82 years ago. I don't know the math of that. But he went through the 1894-95 freeze.
Oh, my gosh.
And see, think about that for a minute, 94, 95. Well, it's the same winter. 94 freeze was in December, 95 was in February. So just what we went through in 2002, that's what happened back with the big famous freeze.
Cycles.
It blooms out and then you get a freeze, it doesn't come the second time. Well, his dad took his family in a covered wagon from north of Orlando, came down through Nocatee, DeSoto County, and he was looking for the first green citrus tree, and he was going to put up, a stake for his house. He went all the way to East Fort Myers in Tice before he found the first green citrus tree.
Wow.
And he ended up setting up camp there, and this gentleman who was 82 was worth a ton of money. He'd been involved with so much with Fort Myers and its development. But it tickled me that I remembered that being 12 years old and hearing that story, and then us going through the same type of freeze event that
Exactly.
if we could have picked up and gone south, we would have too. But so anyway, it's just got a great heritage, and the people have been so friendly. I was a newcomer that kind of came in, nobody knew who I was, but over time with the Turner and the Harrisons and
Right.
and Bobby and that you talked to,
Charlie?
Bobby
Mixon.
Mixon.
Yes.
They just were so warm to me the whole time, and were willing to show me things and teach me things, and I couldn't have been more blessed and have those connections, to be able to learn, as much as I
Right.
could about citrus. And it's you can't stop learning. It's just like today, we've got this new plague with the greening going on, and you can't stop learning. There's some positive things that are coming out now that look like might make a difference and
Right.
keep us going.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, and we're believers in them too, even today. I mean, we think there's a good chance of survival. To get back where we were, with land prices the way they are now,
I don't see
to
that
go
happening
back
now.
in with citrus at the level we were, to become a bigger than a niche and still make good quality juice is out there. But it's gonna be tough. It's
Right.
since the greening thing came in. I did spend 10 years on the CRDF and help form it with John
Right.
and get the thing going and all. And all I can say is we turned over every stone. We did everything we thought was possible. In my 10 years, I only have a couple things I look in the mirror about, and I said, I wish we would have done more in this area. But that's overdoing 1,000 plus things. I tell people, 1,000 or more of the smartest people on the planet
Still
with $1
haven't found
billion,
anything,
and we still don't have a good answer. But AIDS has spent $100 billion and several million people, and they don't have an answer.
Right.
And it's a virus versus a bacteria, a million differences. But it just shows you how sometimes nature has got one up on us, and we can't figure it out. But I think we're going to make it, but it's going to be tough, and we're going to have a few people willing to stay out there on the limb.
Well, let's hope they do, because otherwise it's, a lot of families by the wayside.
Well, what is, it humbled me with the whole deal going back to 2006 was Florida used to be a major pineapple producer, maybe the biggest in the country. And we don't grow pineapples in Florida anymore.
Not at all.
They got a disease and wiped it out, and they couldn't figure out how to do it. So that scared me, I think it was Steve Garnsey with the USDA at the first meeting of HLB. He looked at a room full of packed people and said, canker is like a bad cold or pneumonia. Greening is like liver cancer.
Oh, man.
And so for myself and a lot of people sitting in that room have never forgot that. And that's why we jumped in there and tried to do everything we could, because when he said that, we're like, wow, that's pretty tough.
That is tough. And so, I mean, I'm hoping this injection is going to work.
At
But
least,
that's-
again, it's probably not the total answer, but it's
It's a stopgap measure.
It's
Yeah.
keep us going.
Yeah.
Definitely. We got to get that, not just volume, but quality. You know, we've got to
Right.
get it back. And there's some people really still hanging in there. And fortunately, I'm with some of them, working with them today and in today's time, and trying to beat it.
Well, that's good news. So hopefully something will come on down the pike. But it's been, what, 15 years now that they've been working on it?
Yeah, it came in 2005. 2006, most of us started something. 2007, we all got real aggressive, you know.
Right.
So from 2007 to 22, we've been doing everything we know possible to survive. And it wasn't just a couple of years ago that I was saying, wow, you know, I can see hundreds of acres being pushed up, and now it's thousands.
Yeah, it's happened, for sure.
You know, it's more than that now, so.
Now, there's been more plantings here in DeSoto County, though, because when Steve had sent me the tree count, and there's more trees in the ground now than there was last year. Is there somebody putting in a lot of trees here now, or what?
There's surprisingly, you know, the other thing is it's a lot more trees per acre, so it doesn't take as many acres to get those number of trees.
Okay.
Generally, almost double, you know, the trees. But there's people putting in groves. I mean, our company, or the company I work for, is, you know, put some groves in, and they're in Hardy County or Highlands County, not in DeSoto County. But there's places out there where groves are going in. You know, with that bag that you see on the resets, or the
Right.
tree defender or whatever, it's pretty amazing what that tree does under that bag for the first year and a half to 2 years. They come out, when you take those bags off, they're huge and amazing.
I would
And you
think it'd be
can
like a
take
little greenhouse, a mini greenhouse in there.
It-
What
it
I,
is.
in my mind, picture it.
But it helps it grow, and it doesn't have things that attack it. And you can take a piece of fruit that's grown under that and cut it open, and it's like something you ate in the
Really?
60s. They taste delicious. So it's back to pre-greening fruit, because it doesn't have greening on that tree. And then you get that tree, then you'll maybe have a year or two that's pretty tough, but then they kind of come out of it and start looking really good. So that's where that injection comes in. If we can get that to get approved and get working, then you've kind of got a stopgap to keep them going, you know.
Right.
And so I'm encouraged about that. And then there's some of the PGR stuff that's coming out now with Progib and Citrafix and some of these things that are showing some promise. So, and then when we started this whole thing, we came under some criticism because we were putting a lot of money into plant development and looking at either a naturally occurring genetically resistant tree or
Right.
an actual GMO. And so we studied all of them. We're close. I mean, we're getting there, you know. And, you know, people said, you know, it's going to be 20 years. Yeah, you're right. But it's going to be 20 years when you get 20 years and you haven't done anything,
Right.
too. So it'll be 40 years. Now, we put that money and invested it. The USDA and University of Florida have got some stuff that's getting close.
I hope
You
so.
know, I don't think we're that far away. And then Dr. Wang has got the CRISPR technology, which is the ability to switch a gene on and off. But the great news is the USDA determined that to be non-GMO.
That's
so-
what we were trying to remember what that was called.
Yeah, it's called CRISPR, which is a
CRISPR.
complicated
Right.
You know,
So,
acronym, but
Acronym.
it's the technology is fantastic. It's being used in animals and humans, and Dr. Wang has done it for canker. I mean, he has a Hamlin that's resistant to canker in the pipeline now. As soon as the University of Florida is ready to release it, it's going to be out there.
wow.
And he says he's got a Valencia pretty close on HLB. Well, that doesn't help us, you know, for a few years. I mean, it's going to take a while to get enough of that to get the juice back into the system, but that's encouraging, you know, and
It's
people are
very
willing to hang
encouraging.
in there.
CRISPR, I have to remember that because we were trying, I mean, I knew what it was. I knew it was a non-GMO, but I could not remember the name for anything. So
Well,
Charlie and I were both trying to come up
Dr.
with that.
Wang or Wong, I mean, I love the guy. He's the one that's also determined that he thinks what happens with the actual greening bacteria is that it flips a switch within the tree that causes its own defense systems to go against itself. So similar to rheumatoid arthritis, these
Right.
autoimmune diseases, he thinks that's what's happening with the bacteria and the tree. And so if we can go treat the tree to make some of the effects that it's having on itself better, the tree will be in better shape. And he's basically, he had a meeting just recently where he showed the growers that he's pretty much proven that's the case. He thinks that's the case.
Well, that's
So, I
exciting.
mean, we still have some things out there, you know, we've just named 3 of them or 4 of them that, you know, are encouraging, and, you know, hopefully we can get those.
Get those in the pipeline, absolutely.
Till we buy some time to get those literally where we can plant them in the ground. And even then, you know how that is, that's gonna take years to get.
After that, to get
Deal,
commercial,
but-
commercially viable.
We've been through a lot, you know, with hurricanes, you know, I mean, you know, Charlie hammered us pretty good, you know, Irma hit us pretty good. But
I think it was Bobby was saying Irma hit him worse than Charlie did because he had like 16 inches of water or something, or he had a lot of water on his groves, and it took him 3 days for it to get down before he could even go in and see what the damage was.
there you go. Charlie was a quick mover, not much rain involved, but heavy winds. And Irma was still heavy winds, but it had a lot of water involved.
A lot
with
of
it.
water.
You know, my home place is right in the middle of a lot of where Bobby's groves are, and it's the wettest I had seen it, you know, since going back 40 years ago. You know, it was big time wet. But as long as the water can move and
Right.
keep going, it's okay, you know. But once it sits stagnant, now you're in trouble with 3 days, and so people had that to deal with. But we've had a lot of calamities, you know, and I had a lot of people say that to me and say, hey, we've beat burn nematode, we've beat this, we've beat that. It isn't liver cancer. You know, greening is liver cancer. Remember that. I mean, it's, you know, I remember sitting in this room talking to the Peace River Board of Directors and singling out one grower and saying, did you ever have any sour orange trees? Yeah. What happened to them? Well, they died. So what'd you do? Well, I planted a different rootstock. So what would have happened if you couldn't have planted another rootstock and it would have still died? I'd be out of business. That's greening.
Mm.
That's where we are. There's nothing you can plant that's not going to get green,
Right.
you know. So without some of these other, you know, techniques or changes in the tree itself, you know, we're not going to have a tough time. But
Well, so on that big grove, Alico still has it. Are they going to keep it in grove, or are they going to develop it? Is it in an area that you think that with everything coming in, that's going to?
well, I used to joke about that you could turn that into another retirement community like the Villages, you know,
Right.
something like that. I mean, you got a prison on one side of it, you got dumps on one side of it. Well, most cities have them on one side too, right? But it's a long way out there in the middle of the prairie, but it could ultimately have something. The other thing is just the value of the water. You know, that's such good quality water, and you know, people, you know, have a hard time with water in places, even in Florida, which is amazing to me. You know,
Yes.
I mean, California gets 7 inches of water, or Israel, and they store it all and they save every drop of it. We get 55 inches a year and have the Peace River and all these rivers running through us, you know, and yet we're struggling for water. It tells me we're not doing a very good management job of water. And all we're trying to do is save it, and you can't do this and can't do that. And I'm like, man, I don't kind of get that, you know.
Well, just the stuff that you let out of Lake Okeechobee, then, I mean, I've been living in West Palm for a long time now, and when that stuff comes out of Lake Okeechobee, it's affecting everything.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't care what they tell you, it's not good.
But you know, that's been happening. I grew up in Fort Myers, like I said, and so you literally go back 50 to 60 years ago. My dad would take me out past the Sanibel Lighthouse, you know, and it'd go from dark water to greenish water to blue water, you know, and that's just water coming down, you know, tannic acid water turning it dark, you know, or the soil and all, and the water coming out, and that's been doing that before people were here, you know. But there, if you look at one of those giant maps of Florida and you look at Kissimmee from Orlando Basin all the way down,
Right.
you know, and then you see Davie comes way out into the glades, and there's a lot of changes, you know, too. But the that old man I was telling you about, I talked to, his name was Dave Ireland, but one time we were pretty dry, and he said, "Oh no, I've seen it a lot drier than this," you know. And I'm like, "You have?" And I said, "This is like record." And he goes, "No, no, it was so dry that we'd have to go in the deepest, darkest cypress head we could find, dig for days, and then take cheesecloth and put where the water, when it come up, would be halfway clean, and then run the cattle through there to drink it." And you know, I told people I've never seen it that dry, you know.
No.
And then one time we got dry, I can't remember, 2000 or something, we got way less than normal rainfall, and we were extremely dry. And it would have been close to what he was talking about.
Really?
You know, it was, but the funny thing was, the experts from the water management districts were saying it's going to take us 3 years to build this water back. The lakes in Lake Placid and Sebring were all dry, and the docks way out. One tropical storm filled it all back up.
Wow.
One tropical storm. And it tells you the story of us being a peninsula with water all the way around us.
Right.
There's a lot more going on than just a little dry spot here. Now, you know, I read this morning about all the places that are going through stuff now. You
Like
know,
Lake Mead.
with the high temperatures and what impact it's having on places all over the world. And I think about, you know, my life working outside in Florida. This is unquestionably the hottest year I've ever
I think so.
been involved in. And then I tell my wife that, and a couple of days later, the weatherman on TV says, if you take from January 1st to today, this is the hottest it's ever been in record.
I did not hear it. I missed that one. Wow.
So it could change, you know, in other words, October could cool off in November, and that could change. But up till this point in September, it's the hottest cumulative since January 1st.
Well, I remember when I was a kid, October, we would always have cool weather because you could wear whatever Halloween costume you wanted.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. We were always going to be fine, and there weren't going to be any mosquitoes out because you'd already had that little cool snap. I cannot tell you when it's been cool enough in October to do
It's
that
the same
now.
thing with like high school football. You know,
Yeah,
that
so I can't.
It's
these
warm.
Poor little
It's
kids.
not cold. It used to be cold. Of course,
Yeah.
they used to go to Thanksgiving too in playing in the old days. But no, it's, you know, it's been really warm.
I mean, I feel for them out there just practicing in pads and everything in August. I mean, August in Florida, that's not
Well,
right.
it's just like this year, just what you're saying, and we went through a period without a lot of rain, so you're having these just unbelievably hot days late into the day. You know,
Yeah.
there they are out there practicing, and it's having an impact on the groves. I think our grove that I'm helping managing now is looking pretty good right now because that bacteria doesn't like heat. You know, it's like the Mediterranean effect where Spain or California, it looks like they're going to get it, but they're not going to have the same effect that we have because they get those plus 100-degree days that literally the bacteria goes to almost nothing, and then it has a chance to build back, but then it gets beat back down. Where in Florida, we don't have that kind of heat all the time, you know, and we have some pretty cool. So, you know, it hammers our kind of climate and like what Brazil has, but you know, there's some climates that don't have it. But anyway, we've been really hot this summer. The growths look pretty good.
Let's see, nature's way of taking care of us for at least one more year.
Yeah, keep it going
So,
for sure. So anyway, I appreciate this. I'm a proud DeSoto County and have been now, you know, for 45 plus years. Married a woman born in DeSoto County, and I appreciate what you're doing because it's been a special place and a special industry in this place, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
well, I sure appreciate you coming out and talking to us about it. Thank you.
You're welcome.